Today, guys, our lesson is going to be over metric conversions. So, the metric system is just a measurement system of weights and measures. So, it's a way to measure things. We can measure things like distance, mass, volume. Okay. So, we have some units, some fundamental units in the metric system. So, you've probably heard these in science class. We don't use them too much because in the United States, we use something called the customary system. We use customary units, but which we'll go over tomorrow. But in other countries, they use the metric system, so they use these a lot more. But anyways, for metric units, some of the units we have, one of them we have is a gram. So a gram is a fundamental unit of mass in the metric system. So whenever you hear gram, you should think mass. The other unit we have is a liter. So liter, we actually do use that a little bit with like soda bottles and stuff like that. You say we have a liter of soda or 2 liters of soda. So liter is a fundamental unit of volume in the metric system. And then the next one we use this. You actually do use this a little bit if you're running track. The unit would be meter. So that tells you a distance, right, or a length. So we use meters when we're on track, and I know you've used centimeters a lot in science. Whenever you measure things, you always measure in meters or centimeters. But those are the 3 units you use whenever you're using, whenever you're doing metric units. Okay. So now we have some information we're just going to go through real quick about metric length. So these are conversions, so it tells you how many of one unit is in another unit. Now, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because all this stuff is on your star chart, guys. You do not have to memorize this. If we did, we'd have to sit down and make sure we knew it all, but it's on your star chart. You just have to know to look at your star chart, find what unit you're using and what unit you're trying to turn it into, and find the conversion rate, okay? So if you have 1 kilometer, that's the same as 1,000 meters, okay? So they're equal to each other. If you have 1 meter, that is the same as 100 centimeters. So the first part of centimeter is centa, and that means 100. Okay, so you don't have to remember that, but it's always nice to know. All right, 1 centimeter is the same as 10 millimeters. Okay, and then we have our conversion for volume. 1 liter is the same as 1,000 milliliters. For mass, 1 kilogram is the same as 1,000 grams. 1 gram is the same thing as 1,000 milligrams. Okay, so these again are on your star chart. You don't have to memorize them. All right, so the good thing about the metric system, and if you notice, all of these numbers are like ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. That's because the metric system is based on powers of tens. So really, you're only going to be working with like numbers like 1, 10, 1,000, 100, 10,000, but we actually don't do that in 5th grade. But if you're doing metric system in higher grades, you will maybe have 10,000 or 100,000, bigger numbers or smaller numbers. Whenever we're doing the metric system, we know we're going to use powers of 10, which are those numbers I just listed, which means that we're either going to do 2 things. We're either going to multiply or divide by a power of 10. So powers of 10s include numbers like, well, 10 itself can include 100, can include 1,000, which is really nice, right? Because it's not too difficult to multiply or divide by 10, 100, or 1,000, right? Those are pretty easy numbers because we have 1 and 0. Those are easy to multiply by. Okay, here's one thing we want to make sure we know. Whenever we are converting, so we're we're going from 1 unit to a different unit, okay? Whenever we go from when we're starting with a large unit and we're trying to change to a smaller unit, whenever we have a large unit and we're converting to a smaller unit, that is a hint to tell you to multiply. And then the opposite, when we start with a small unit and we're going to change it to a big unit, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to divide. So by just knowing those 2 rules, large unit to small unit, multiply, small unit to large unit, we divide. Okay? So let's go ahead and do a couple practice problems, and I'm going to be using this a lot. Large unit to small unit, multiply. Small unit to large unit, divide. Okay, so we have a problem right here. So we want to convert. We want to change. We want to say how many grams are in 40,000 milligrams. So we're trying to figure out how many grams. I don't know that part, so that's what I'm trying to find. I'm starting with milligrams, right? So I know how many milligrams. I want to convert it or change the milligrams to grams. So I want to see how many grams are in 40,000 milligrams. Okay, so I can go to my star chart. I'm going to write out my my conversion that it says on the star chart. So I see that 1 gram is the same as 40,000 milligrams. Or sorry, 1 gram is the same as 1,000 milligrams. I was looking at that 40,000 and that's what I wrote. So yeah, so on the star chart, 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. They're the same amount. Okay. Now, I want to turn I want to figure out how many grams, based off of the question, equal 40,000 milligrams. Okay, so we can kind of think here. What do we think is bigger? Is 1 gram bigger or is 1 milligram bigger? Which one is bigger? 1 gram is bigger, right? So I'm going from milligrams to grams, right? I'm converting milligrams to grams. So I'm converting, this is a small unit. I'm converting a small unit to a large unit. So based off of your notes, what did that say to do? We're going to divide, right? So I'm going to divide by whatever my conversion is. So my conversion is 1,000. 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams. So I'm going to divide by that number, 1,000. Okay, so I'm going to do 4,000. I'm going to do something with that 4,000 to change it to grams. I'm going to divide it, because I'm going from the small unit to a large unit, by my conversion. My conversion is 1,000. Okay, so I have to do 4,000 by 1,000. Now, here's kind of another mini lesson within this lesson. Whenever you multiply or divide by numbers that end in 0, so like I have 4,000 and 1,000, I can cross off equals 0. So like I can cross off 1 0 over here and 1 0 over here when they end in 0. If I cross off 1 0 over here, I can cross off 1 0 over here. I can cross off 1 0 over here, and I can cross off 1 0 over here. Okay, so as long as if I cross off 1 0 on this number, if I can cross off 1 0 on this number, I can cross off a 0 for both of them. Okay, I can only do this when I cross off a 0 in both numbers. I can't just cross off zeros of one number. So now we're really doing the problem 4 divided by 1. That's very easy, right? It's 4. So my answer in this problem is 4 grams. Okay, let's try again. All right, how many milliliters are in 30 liters? So I don't know how many milliliters, but I know I have 30 liters. So I'm going to be turning liters to milliliters. So I'm going to go to my conversion, and I see that there is 1,000 milliliters equals 1 liter. Okay, now my problem says, okay, I have 30 liters. I don't know how many milliliters I have. Okay, so I'm starting with liters, and I'm going to turn them into what? Milliliters. So which unit's bigger here? If I have 1 liter or 1 milliliter, which one's bigger? Well, 1 liter is bigger than 1 milliliter, because one liter would be 1,000 milliliters. So if I have 1 milliliter, I barely have any, like it's a very small amount compared to 1 liter. So I'm going from a large unit to a small unit. When I go from a large unit to a small unit, I multiply. Okay, so I multiply what I have, 30 liters, times my conversion, 1,000. Okay, and that will give me my answer. So when I multiply, another little mini lesson, when I multiply since we're using a lot of numbers that end in 0, I can ignore my zeros when both numbers have zeros at the end, or when one of my numbers have a 0 in the end. I can ignore the zeros and I can add them back later. So really, I'm going to multiply my non-zeros by each other. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I'm going to go and count how many zeros I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can add those. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so my answer is 30,000 milliliters. If you don't know how to do the mini lesson part with the zeros and stuff, if you just multiply like normal, you'll still get the right answer. So I'm just doing this for the sake of time. And to teach you maybe a little trick if you didn't know it. But it works. Okay. Let's do the next one. How many grams are in 19 kilograms? So again, we're trying to figure out how many grams are in 19 kilograms. So I'm going to my star chart. I'm going to give you a second to go look at your star chart and see if you can tell me how many grams are in 1 kilogram, or how many kilograms are in 1 gram. All right, hopefully you found that. And hopefully you saw that there are 1,000 grams equal to 1 kilogram. Okay, and we're trying to figure out how many grams are in 19 kilograms. Okay, so I want to think, I have kilograms, right? I have 19 kilograms, and I'm going to turn those into what? Grams. So I'm going from, well, which one's bigger? Am I going from a small unit to a large unit, or a large unit to a small unit? Kilograms, since 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams, I know kilograms, 1 kilogram is larger than 1 gram. So I'm going from a large unit to a small unit. Whenever I go from a large unit to a small unit, I multiply. Okay, so I'm going to multiply how many kilograms I have, which is 19, times my conversion. My conversion is 1,000. And now I can multiply. I can do that rule I just did. I'm going to multiply the non-zero numbers. 1 times 19 is 19. I'm going to add my zeros. How many zeros do I have in this multiplication problem? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So my answer is 19,000 grams are in 19 kilograms. All right, how many milliliters? We don't know. We're figuring out milliliters. Are in 6,000 liters. Okay, so I go to my star chart, and I see that there's 1,000 milliliters equal to 1 liter. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how many milliliters equal 6,000 liters. Okay, so now I'm turning liters. I'm going to convert from liters to milliliters because that's what I'm trying to figure out. So I want to think, am I going from a large unit to a small unit, or a small unit to a large unit? Well, here I'm going from a large unit to a small unit. So whenever we do that, we're going to multiply. Every time we do large to small, we're multiplying. Okay, so when you start large, you multiply. When you start small, you divide, if you want to think about it like that. So we're starting large, so we're going to multiply what we have, 6,000, by our conversion is 1,000. And, well, I'm going to use that trick I did again. Multiply the non-zero numbers. 6 times 1 is 6, and then count all your zeros in your problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can add 6 zeros to the problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put our commas. Get 6 million. That's pretty big. We get 6 million milliliters and 6,000 liters. So that's the answer. That is your notes. Go ahead and get started on your practice. If you need any help or anything, make sure you come ask. If you don't, then just work on your practice.